A quick message to my regular viewers that no, this is not a Duel Links video, and my Duel Links videos will continue again soon. Hello, I'm Luke Tyler. Most people online know me for Duel Links, but I also play for TCG. I want to start by saying I'm very sorry for the potato camera quality. It's the best I can do right now, unfortunately. And yeah, I got top 16 at UK Nationals last weekend playing Sky Striker. I play Striker because it's kind of the only deck that I have, really. That's good. But yeah, I wanted to play Dynamorphia actually, but you can't really play Dynamorphia with the time rules, so I went with Sky Striker. This is a deck that I am very comfortable with though. I played a build that's very different from Poe's build at 1 Hartford, because I felt like people would be a lot more prepared for the demise of a land variant. And also I think that main deck D-Barrier isn't that great anymore, because there's a lot more Punk decks in the meta, and a lot more Therion decks. For top 16 praising, I got this mat, these sleeves, this box of 24 packs, and more packs. So a lot of cool cards to open, that'd be fun. And yeah, without further ado, let's get on into the deck profile for my blind second version of Striker that played no Handtraps. So I play 3 Ray, this is fairly self-explanatory, 2 Rose, so I played 2 Rose because 1 I think is not enough, and 3 is too much. The thing with Striker is that you lose if you don't open a way into your Hayate, your Kagari, that sort of thing, but at the same time, you also lose if you draw too many of these cards, which is why I only play 2 Rose, but I also think that 1 is not enough. And I also main deck Handtraps. This card is mostly in the main deck because I play a very smokescreen-ish side deck, so I don't really have room to side deck cards to deal with anti-spell fragrance. But this card is also very good for game 1, especially if you win the dice roll and make them go first anyway, because they will play around the Lightning Storm by putting their cards in defense, and if they put their Fleur in defense, it has less defense than Handtraps, so you can go Handtraps, attack over Fleur, and then you still have the effect to pop another card. So in general, this card was very, very good this weekend. And then I play 1 Trap, which is Metaverse. You can likely guess what card this is for, but also it can grab Area 0 for consistency. So if you don't open one of your ways into Hayate or Kagari, which would be one of these as well, then you can also grab Area 0 if you want to. On to the rest of the spells. What is a bit different is I main deck 3 Afterburners. I think this card is very, very good right now, especially in a build like this that blinds second with 33 spells, so I have a very high chance of getting the full effect of Afterburners on my first turn, which is also why, of course, I play 3 Anchor, and I play 3 Shark Cannon. So this build, as you can kind of tell from these ratios, is a lot more focused on getting the full effects of these cards as fast as possible. The only matchup where this is bad going second against right now, I feel like, is Sword Soul. Even then, it still hits the 10 Ys, which is nice. And then we play the 1 multi-roll. This card is of course very good in Sky Striker, it helps a lot with your grind game, and it's even better in this build because we have even more Striker spells to set back to the field. And then I also main deck 3 copies of Talents, which again is really strong because I am playing a blind second version of a deck. A lot of the time you can force them to use a monster effect in the main phase and then just do it to draw 2, which by itself is really good. Or if your hand is already insane, you can use it to put a card from the opponent's hand back to the deck, which is also really good. Opening multiple isn't good, which happened quite a lot to me, but if you do open multiple, you can very simply just pop it for multi-roll, or for Area 0, or for droplets, or something like that. This card was almost the sole reason why I played this deck, but unfortunately the main reason why we play this deck is of course everybody's favourite field spell, Mystic Mine, and because of this card I am responsible for the worst feature match of all time, where I went for deck out in game 1 because I thought, yeah, it's fine, he's not going to main deck Duster in Punk Adventure, and I could not have been more wrong. I might as well also clear up what happened in the feature match. So game 1 I went for deck out with mine, and I lost because he main decks Feather Duster. People seem to think that I giga through because I did not make a push, but I went for deck out because I was like, why would anyone main deck Duster when you have Draco back as an out to Mystic Mine? Although yes, I could have read into the situation better because Draco back was already used and he was not surrendering. But people also do not seem to realise that just because he was not surrendering does not mean that he has an out to Mystic Mine. I figured that maybe he was waiting to see the contents of my deck before surrendering. I haven't done TCG videos in 6 years, and I've forgotten how many YouTube commenters are self-proclaimed pros because they make day 2 at their locals.
Trash. Striker player had game. Why didn't he just poke with Hayate or just play?
If I put a monster on the field, he makes access code. Hayate poke would not win that game.
Imagine thinking this kind of deck will work for the second time. People already know after Hartford is winning thanks to surprise factor only.
This isn't even a similar build to the deck that won Hartford. No demise of a land, no main deck D barrier, no main deck Trap Trick, no main deck Handtraps, and I'm going blind second.
That's what happens when all you do is copy your deck list instead of building your own, fitting your own playstyle and stuff. You could have easily gotten that game just by poking with Hayate.
Okay, so again, Hayate would not have won that game. At most, I go Hayate, poke, then multi-roll, send it to graveyard, next turn Hayate, poke, multi-roll, send it to graveyard. So at most, Hayate poking was doing 3000 damage. They have 8000 life points. And again, it's not a copy of a Hartford build, it's the same deck but a very different build. And finally, you knew he had Duster because you were watching the stream. I was sat there not knowing that my opponent main decks Duster in a deck that normally does not main deck Duster. Anyway, back to the deck profile. Although there is a lot more adventure decks now, which play, Draco back to out Mystic Mine, it still is of course very good. It always at least trades with a disruption, especially in game 1, where it's even more insane in game 1. And even in game 1, where they have Draco back to deal with Mystic Mine, sometimes you can be lucky and also find your way into a Cosmic Cyclone to deal with Draco back. So I play Cosmic because, again, I don't have space in the side deck, which you will see later on, to side deck the outs to Anti-Spell Fragrance. So I kind of have to main deck the outs to Anti-Spell Fragrance. But Cosmic in general I think is good in the main deck. As I mentioned, it hits Draco back, and also it's good against the back row from Sword Soul. It at least forces Brandon in red, and of course it hits Scythe if they go for the Dad Girl Wonder Magician play to get Scythe, as opposed to the Flew Away to get Scythe. But in general, it felt very strong to have in game 1 because there were a lot of Eldritch and Flunderies around. I also main deck a World Dino Wrestling. This card is very good because you can pull it from deck with Terraforming or Set Rotation, and then when it goes to graveyard you can summon your Pankratops from the deck, which I found to be a pretty strong play. I don't play Foolish Burial Goods for this because ironically I don't think that Foolish Burial Goods is good. It's not too bad, but there isn't really space in the main deck, I feel like. But also playing this made me feel a lot more safer playing Set Rotation, because otherwise if I don't play this, then I only have the one extra field spell for Set Rotation. And I don't really like playing more than one of this because it's not always that amazing to open. Since yes, you can find good cards off of it, but it is quite random a lot of the time. And then I play 2 Desires. So normally I do agree that Prosperity is better in Sky Striker, but since I main deck the 3 talents, I think that Desires is better, because the most common effects of talents that I use is the Draw 2 effect, which, if you draw 2, you then can't use Prosperity in the same turn. So that's why I play Desires over playing Prosperity. The card's very good because it lets you get to the full effects of your striker spells a lot more quickly. I also play 2 Droplets. This card is very good for going second. It's also pretty good going first as well, which I felt like was relevant, because I felt that as I got further into the tournament, people would know what I'm playing, and then they would make me go first. So it's pretty good there, and also it's good going second to hit stuff like Scythe, Fleur, and it pairs well with Mystic Mine as well. I was on the verge of playing free, but I felt like the card doesn't really complement your awkward hands too well, since you can't always afford the discard. So I only play one because it's not that amazing versus the Punk decks compared to the other cards in the deck. It felt like this card was a flex spot, and I wanted a blowout card in this flex spot. And as I previously mentioned, I wasn't that comfortable playing 3 droplets, so I wanted to go with Lightning Storm for that slot in the deck. We play the one called by. This card is of course very insane this meta, but it might seem a bit weird in a blind second deck compared to in other decks where it's just a given to play. But I think that while called by has always been a very strong card, what makes this card so insane right now is that it's good going both first and also good going second. And it's also strong because when you break their board, you want cards to be able to prevent them from rebuilding it. And then last card in the main deck is one Change of Heart. This card is very nice going second, and it always at least trades with a disruption. So that is the 40 card main deck, as you can probably guess from the upstart. Onto the extra deck, we have 3 Kigari, 3 Shizuku, 2 Hayate. I feel like everyone plays this ratio, but no one really explains it. So of course, the 3 Kigari is obvious. So what makes the third Shiz better than the third Hayate is the games where you miss having the third Shizuku. It feels a lot more detrimental than missing a third Hayate, because there are definitely games where you can just easily play without having 3 Hayate. The games where you don't have the third Shizuku, you can miss out on not having an extra card or 2. And then 1 Kaina. I never summoned it to win in time. I still summon the card a lot, because summoning it on their turn with Ray to block an attack is definitely very helpful to protect your life points. And then we have the 1 Zeke, which is the best Link 2 to make because it's a Sky Striker, so it can float into Ray. And a lot of the time you do the effect to send Area 0 to grave to climb into Unicorn, to then climb into the access code. And then every Sky Striker deck plays Dark now, because the card's very good. There's a lot of Dark things in the meta, so definitely a very, very strong card to play. And now normally Sky Striker plays the Selene and the Hauka Fibrax, but since I play no Handtraps, of course I don't play those cards, so I have 2 flex spots to work with. And for one of them I play the Fire Charmer, which in theory does come up quite a bit, because you can take their Ash Blossom to link up into Unicorn, to then go into access code with another card, or after you break the Sword Soul board, you can take the Long Yuan Synchro, and then use that to banish their Tenyis on the next turn. But I never summoned this, so I'm not sure if I would play it going forwards. I was afraid of the 6000 attack arrival at Ignister, as well as Psychic End Punisher. I played the Underworld Goddess to link it off, which I never faced against at Ignister, and my opponent never summoned End Punisher, so it never came up. But I'm still glad that I played this card, because I felt really safe knowing that if I did face against at Ignister, or against someone summoning the End Punisher, that I would not auto-lose if they summoned one of those cards. It also outs Dragoon, but nobody really plays Dragoon right now. And then onto the side deck, we have the 3 Token Collector. This is the only hand trap that I play in the entire deck, because it's one of the only hand traps that is always going to be very high impact. So of course I side it always in against Sword Soul, and I also side it in against the Adventurer decks, which I know not many people put the card in against Adventure decks, but I think it's good to side it in against Adventure decks when you're playing Sky Striker, because Draco Back is a very good card against control decks, which I think makes this card hold a lot more value against the adventure decks when you're playing Striker. And then for the smokescreen part of the deck, we play 3 Lilith, 3 D-Barrier, 3 different Dimension Ground, and 3 Trap Trick. So the idea with this package in the side deck is, what I would do is, if I lose game 1 or game 2, going into game 2 or game 3, I would put in 9, 12, or even 15 cards, and then elect to go first, so that against a deck, let's say for example against Despia or Sword Soul, you pretty much have 9 copies of D-Barrier with Lilith, D-Barrier, and Trap Trick. Lilith does use up your normal summon, but if it is to skip their turn, that is worth it, I think. And there is some confliction with Desires with these cards, but if you open up Desires plus Trap Trick, I would hold the Desires for next turn normally. So it meant that going first, I would either have 9 copies of D-Barrier, or 9 copies of different Dimension Grounds. So, and like, what makes these kind of pseudo floodgates so good is that they don't get traded off by Duster Twin, because they can just be chained, which makes them very, very strong. And DG is pretty much a turn skip against Punk, similarly to how D-Barrier is a turn skip versus Despia and Sword Soul. And also, nobody plays Cross Out for this card yet, which makes it stronger. So yeah, that was my top 16 UK Nationals deck profile. Shout out to my friend Billy for lending me Lilith, Talents, and the Underworld Goddess. And shout out to Connor for lending me access codes. And a huge shout out to our local prodigy Owen, who won the Dragon Duel Nationals. Owen is insane at the game for his young age, and I think he'll be doing very, very good at Euros this year, and possibly even Worlds next year. Fingers crossed. And also, shout out to all my opponents. Everyone was really nice, despite me playing Mystic Mine. Also, shout out to everyone that I met for the first time, including Farther, Jordan Gallagher, and some other cool people. And yeah, that's pretty much all. Thank you all for watching. Have a perfectly balanced rest of your day, and see you all next time.